and we're really happy that you took the time to be with us tonight. So what is spiritual life writing? Life writing is integrative work that brings together memory and experience. Spiritual life writing invites the whole self in, memory and experience, fact, feeling, and imagination, the profane and the sacred. We offer these life writing sessions to help you find your authentic voice and to shed whatever fears make you hold your tongue. And that's from our leader, Susan Scott, who you just heard at the top of the presentation. I would like to take a moment now to acknowledge the land that I live on, the land that I share, and that I'm very grateful to share. I live in Hamilton, Ontario. The city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Linda.
Thank you, Laurie. So glad to be here with everyone. So I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and that's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. And as an immigrant settler, far from the land of my own ancestors, I'm thankful to be on this land from which I call home. So if you feel moved to do so, I invite you all to enter your own territorial acknowledgement into the chat. Yeah, so for today's session, Laurie and I will just be interviewing each other, having a conversation. We'll each do a reading of our own work. We'll sink into a writing exercise, and then we'll open it up for discussion and participation. So it is my pleasure to introduce Laurie Sebastianutti. She is an author of award-winning creative nonfiction that interrogates infertility, feminism, and the Catholic faith. Central to the essay collection she is building is how first-generation settler Canadians try to navigate spiritual obligations and traditions in the face of the mandate to build a new world that is sustainable, equitable, and just. So I've admired Laurie for many years now for her skill as a writer, but also for her insight, her kindness, and really just as a kindred spirit, as a writer who incorporates faith in her own writing. So happy to be speaking with you.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Likewise, and thank you for that introduction. I'm also very excited to introduce to you Linda Trinh. She is a Vietnamese Canadian author who writes nonfiction and fiction for adults and children. Her work has appeared in anthologies and literary magazines, and she will publish the early chapter book series, The Wind Kids, in October 2022. Her writing explores her Buddhist upbringing, love of world mythologies, and travel to sacred spaces. And yes, Linda and I met over social media, but I first was introduced to Linda through her writing, a beautiful piece in Prairie Fire magazine, Incest and Ancestors. And I remember reading it and being drawn to Linda. She was somebody I didn't know, but I admired her ability to write about spirituality because that's what I wanted to do. So for us to come full circle at this moment is wonderful. So yeah, Linda, I wanted to ask you a question. Tell us a little bit about your faith tradition and how questioning plays a part.
Thanks, Laurie. So I was born in Vietnam, and I came to Canada when I was 3. So I would say that I grew up around Buddhism, but I didn't necessarily grow up as a Buddhist or within the Buddhist religion. My parents were not religious, so I really only remember going to temple a few times a year. We would go for the Lunar New Year. And really, I felt out of place when I did go. So there were rituals, lighting incense in front of the various statues of the Buddhas, bowing in front of them. There was a lot of chanting. It just felt so removed from my daily life. Also, like, my dad passed away when I was 7. And afterwards, we set up an altar to him in our house. And so that's part of ancestor veneration, which is a folk religion that's popular in Vietnam and other Asian countries. So that was also another layer. That was the spirituality we practiced that was separate from institutional religion of Buddhism. But I do remember going to temple for his funeral, and the monks in their saffron robes would chant, and they would chant for hours. So this was both comforting to me, but it was also so removed. It was so mysterious. I didn't really feel connected to it. Um, so really, I learned and studied about Buddhism myself when I was a young adult. So I took some religion classes in university. I read books myself about the different types of Buddhism, about the history. And so I think for me, doubts and questions, it's always kind of been interwoven with faith, because I was never really like taught the principles or the practices. Like I watched the rituals and I observed, but I was never explained that this is truth. Suffering, cycles of rebirth, nirvana, these were all this was all language that I learned later on in life. And unlike, other people in my life, people in my family who were content with a non-spiritual life, this was something that I wanted. I wanted to be a believer. I craved faith and spirituality. So,
Yeah.
Lori, the same question for you around what is your faith and how does doubt fit in?
Thank you, Linda. And I had a very different experience than you in that I was born and raised in a faith tradition, very solid faith tradition. I was born and raised in Roman Catholicism to Italian immigrant parents, and religion, faith was a big part of our life. The entire immigrant community. I always say being Italian Canadian and being Italian Catholic for me for many, many years was interchangeable. I didn't know one without the other. I went to Ontario's publicly funded Catholic schools, so all my instruction was in the faith. My mother was very religious. My father, not so much. He was more in name only. She was raised by her parents. She was born in Sicily, and her parents were very strict, pretty much dictated every aspect of her life. So she turned to the church, and she found solace there, especially in weekly mass attendance, which she then passed on to us, and I still maintain today. And she found great strength and solace, and that was something she passed on to me. My doubt came much later, in my early 40s, after the birth of my second child, after a decade-long infertility struggle, when I discovered my church's stance on assisted reproduction and that they did not support it. And I found this disheartening and troubling. And I then began to look at other teachings I didn't agree with, and LGBTQ, role of women, clericalism, behaviors that were abhorrent. And so what I did is I turned to the Gospels. The church gave me the Gospels and the teachings of Jesus: love, inclusion, tolerance, acceptance, humility, forgiveness. So today I am still a Catholic, but my faith is not as just on autopilot. It's with much more thought. Like I said, I rely on those teachings and on the Catholic belief in sacramentality, which is God is present in everyone and everything. So I hold fast to those. And that really helps me. So Linda, I talked about where my faith is today. Where is your faith journey today? How did being exposed to Buddhism have an influence on what you believe now?
Thanks, Lori, and thanks for sharing your story. It's so fascinating just to talk about it, to share my own, and just to see how different it was. But then again, just also that connection point of, yeah, it's a deeper sense, not on autopilot. It's just really intentional, just trying to find something. Yeah, and you were saying that you're a Catholic now, yeah. And I would say I would not consider myself a Buddhist now. So I would consider myself spiritual, but not religious. I would consider myself a seeker. I do believe that there's more out there, that there's something to search for in the earth, in the elements, in the echoes of my ancestors. And I feel that I can seek that out myself without needing to identify within a faith tradition. I am influenced by some of the anchors of Buddhism that I learned later on in life. That idea of the bodhisattva really appeals to me. So that's a core of Mahayana Buddhism, which is the kind of Buddhism that came to Vietnam from China. So it's a person, ordinary person, who escapes the cycles of reincarnation and has reached nirvana, has reached enlightenment. But instead of ascending there, they decide to stay on earth and help others, serve others in their own journeys to reach enlightenment. So that concept, I really felt relevant. It was something that I could incorporate into my life, that I could live my life in a meaningful way. And so I've read some of the books, read books in English written by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. The quote for this session's description: doubt in my tradition is something that is very helpful. Because of doubt, you can thirst more and you will get a higher sense of proof. Really speaks to me because it's in that questioning, it's in that reflecting, it's in that examining is where you find like the miracles, where you find yourself being closer to more, to the sacred, and doing that through writing. So Lori, we've talked about faith, we've talked about where we started, we talked about where we are now. So how does doubt factor into your writing? Do you use writing about doubt as a way of working it out, or is it something that just won't leave you alone?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, absolutely. I use writing to help me figure out what it is I'm confused about, I don't understand. And talking about doubt and faith, like actually speaking to someone, is a lot harder for me than writing about it. And it's still considered taboo in many circles. So how did I begin writing about it? I looked to other writers who kind of paved the way for me. And I think of, in particular, the late Rachel Held Evans, a American evangelical writer who wrote about doubt. And in my own tradition, which was very reassuring for me as I started on this journey, was Father Richard Rohr, who is a theologian and Catholic priest. And interestingly enough, he writes about doubt, and he just met with Pope Francis recently. So I found that very hopeful, actually. The quote that kind of got me started, and I love the quote that you read as well. Along those lines, Richard Rohr says, "In my mind, one of the markers of an evolving faith is an ability to integrate doubt, to hold the tension between what we've been taught and what we've come to know as true." And that's really helpful to me because I go back in my life, what have I been taught? I look at the lens of my life experiences, and then I come out on the other end thinking, okay, what holds up and what doesn't hold up? And that's really what my writing has been about. So yeah, thank you for that question. I wanted to ask you, Linda, as you're on this journey, what is the most rewarding part about writing about faith and doubt for you?
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, I love what you just said around tension and holding tension. And really that is that idea of, it's critical thought of like what we hold most dear, it's what we hold most sacred, but also doing it in a way that's loving and open and, what serves us. Mm-hmm. So for me, the most rewarding part is that I feel compelled to write about, what perplexes me, what keeps me wondering. Spirituality shows up in my fiction for kids. It shows up in my fiction for adults. And in my creative nonfiction, it's a way for me to reconcile the theoretical, what is far away, what is unknowable, what's too big, and kind of hopefully distill that into something that's ordinary, everyday life. How do I incorporate, the profane and the sacred, like the sacred with the ordinary? And really for writing, it's just that I love the flow of the feeling I get when I write, when I know that I'm traveling the path I meant to be on. It's a space that I create for myself. So that's outside of like day job, kids, errands, chores. It's a space I create for myself. So I wanted to ask you, so on the other side of that question, what would you say is the most challenging part about writing about faith and doubt for you?
Thank you. Yeah, and before I say that, I also identify with what you said about many of the rewards, like knowing the path that you're on, it's your path. And it's a way of, writing is a way of integrating spirituality into your everyday life. And it is for me as well. The flip side, I think above all else, it's the labeling that may come with this type of writing. To some, I might seem like I am anti-church, which I am not.
Mm.
To others, because I'm still part of the organized church and an organized faith, I may seem not to be a free thinker, which I would also disagree with that assessment. And so I come to it, as I'm sure you do, at a place of love. And I think in the end, the writing will speak for itself, labels or not. So, yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you around there is that kind of, what is this type of writing? How will it be received? What, how many asterisks will you put on it? Yeah, and I love that. Just like, how to make it more accessible, how is it can be a way in for readers and also people who are traveling this journey who want to write about this. Yeah, and then you mentioned, how the writing will speak for itself. So yeah, I'm happy to like move into like now we can talk about we could read from our own writing. So Lori, can you read us something and can you set the context for us?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that invitation. Yes, I will read an excerpt of an essay that's coming out this winter in Queen's Quarterly. And it's an essay that examines the intersection of infertility, adoption, and faith. And it's titled In Art as in Life. Above a chair in my parents' bedroom hangs a silver-plated plaque of the Virgin Mary cradling the infant Jesus. Within the folds of her tunic, her baby grasps her chest with his tiny hand while she looks up lovingly to the heavens. As a child following my mother around the house, I used to crawl up in that chair, my eyes alternating between the mother on the wall and the one in the flesh before me, both with the soft, supple skin of youth, both bearing the name Maria. It is no secret that Catholics are raised to revere Mary. Of the mother of Jesus, Pope Francis has said, "The heart of the Lord began to beat within Mary. The God of life drew oxygen from her." And of earthly mothers, he says, "To be a mother is a great treasure." Mothers in their unconditional love and their sacrificial love for their children are the antidote to individualism. An eloquent message. But what message do his words send to those of us who wish to be mothers but cannot? What do they say to those who are already mothers and are told to forget? The Catholic Church does not support IVF, in vitro fertilization, or any type of assisted reproductive technology in which conception occurs outside of the body. In the 1987 document, Donum Vitae, or Instruction for Respect for Human Life, Pope John Paul II argued that IVF, by failing to respect the connection between procreation and the conjugal act of a married couple, is morally unacceptable. IVF, he says, robs procreation of its perfection. But of adoption, the pontiff's views are very different. To adopt a child, he said, is a great work of love. When it is done, much is given, but much is also received. It is a true exchange of gifts. As a result of these teachings, Catholics who pursue assisted reproduction are deeply stigmatized. It's as if our quest to achieve pregnancy and biological parenthood somehow undermines the church. So, Linda, I would love for you to read something for us. And if you could set it up as well. And thank you for that invitation, for allowing me to read my work.
Well, thank you, Lori, for sharing that, something so personal. And yeah, when we write creative nonfiction, it's so close. And I mean, I love that piece. I love the images of the Virgin Mary, your mother, motherhood, and how that is juxtaposed with like the factual, almost clinical type of writing afterwards. And I mean, that's the beauty of creative nonfiction, and that has such an impact, I think. So thank you for sharing that. And yes, I'll share a bit of my writing as well. So I'm going to read from an essay, Gates and Goddesses, which was part of the Fiddlehead literary magazine that came out earlier this year. So the essay itself, it's structured in a way that it's the myth of the goddess Inyana. She travels to the underworld and she must pass through 7 gates. So I use that as a structure for my own journey. Passing through each gate, I confront something I thought I knew or that I held. about faith. So this is First Gate. From age 9 to 12, I spent every Saturday afternoon in Vietnamese school in the frigid basement of Chùa Hai Hoi, Winnipeg's only Vietnamese Buddhist temple. We left our shoes just inside the entrance, where the ever-present scent of nhang, a specific type of Vietnamese incense, made me gasp and lingered in my hair and on my skin hours afterwards. At break time, while my two cousins were drawing pictures of Ninja Turtles, I snuck upstairs to the worship area to spy on the faithful. These weekly peeks felt like sinful indulgences. Statues of golden Buddhas floated on lotus blossoms. I spied on the devoted as they stood before the Buddhas, light incense, pray, bow, and depart. Their backs seemed straighter and their steps lighter after the ritual. I observed, but did not know how to join in. My mom would call herself a Buddhist, as she was not a Catholic or a follower of Cao Dai, which are other popular religions in Vietnam. Yet she was not a practicing Buddhist. She made offerings of food and flowers directly to our ancestors and to my dad after he passed away. This was a tradition embedded in Vietnam long before institutional religions established themselves. Buddhism had always been there, a part of my background, a part of my heritage. Yet I imagined true faith would be more comparable to true love, a foundation of trust, intense curiosity, fast-fueled passion, and slow-burning adoration. Buddhism was my starting point for the sacred, but I couldn't stay there. Buddhism was not my true love. I deserved to fall in love with my faith. The garment of my ideas of faith that I had wrapped around myself began to loosen, and the threads along the seams began to fray.
Oh, thank you, Linda. That was beautiful. Beautiful prose, beautiful sensory writing. I love the glimpse we get of you as a young child and your curiosity. And you're spying on the faithful, as you say, and your peers are coloring Ninja Turtles. So I think that is so telling. And I love that line, I deserve to fall in love with my faith. And I think that's so powerful. So yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for reading.
Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah. So we read for you and our writing, and now we'd love to give you a chance to write something. We have 3 prompts for you this evening. If you have your paper, your notebook, your pen, your pencil, if you want to get that ready. So yeah, we have 3 questions, or 3 prompts, I should say, and we'll give you about 4 minutes per prompt, and to just take the time to go into yourself and, you know, reflect on some of the things that Linda and I discussed tonight. Yeah, I'll begin with the first question or prompt if everyone is ready. So the first prompt is, think of the questions that swirl around in your mind about faith and religion and spirituality. Write about 1 or 2 questions or themes. So questions about religion, faith, or spirituality that you have. And we'll give you about 4 minutes. And I believe, Linda, you're going to keep time?
Yep, and I'll give you everyone a heads up at the 30-second mark.
Perfect.
Okay, so about 30 seconds left. If you want to finish up your last few thoughts on that. Okay. Yeah, if you just want to wrap up your last few thoughts on that question, and we can move on to question number 2. So now, write about an object or place, a sound, a memory, a taste, whatever bubbles up for you. Something that is both comforting, yet causes a sort of uneasiness tied to your question. So where is the tension? And again, about 3-4 minutes to this, and I'll keep time and let you know when you have about 30 seconds left. So about 30 seconds left for this question. Okay, so if you want to just wrap up your last few thoughts on that one, we can move on to the third question.
So for the third part of this prompt, we'd love for you to write into your feelings of the questions and experiences. So for example, in my piece, I focused on that image from childhood, Madonna and child, and how for me that represented love, and it was a comforting image. But then after I became an adult, that image caused me pain, and I reflected on church teachings that reinforced that pain.
Mhm. Thanks, Lori. And for my reading, I chose a memory of myself being at temple and how I felt like an outsider. Um, and then thinking about the questions of, well, what do I imagine faith to feel like? And using that as a starting point. So 4 minutes, and I'll let you know when it's 30 seconds left. So about 30 seconds left. Okay. So thank you so much for participating in the writing exercises. Hopefully if something that you can go back to if you feel like it. And yeah, just before we kind of end the formal part of this session, invite participants to share what they wrote if they feel like it. Just wanted to let you know how you can find myself and Lori online, find our writing. So Lori's website, I think Susan's going to put in the chat for our information as well, Sebastianutti.com, and I'm at lindaytrin.com. And we invite you to email us as well. I think that'll be available in the chat, sebastianuttil@gmail.com and lindaytrin@gmail.com. Oh yes, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for putting that up as well. You can see it visually. So we just invite you to reach out to us to see more of our writing. And if you feel, you want to email us, if you have any questions or would like to share anything, please feel free.
Mhm.
So thank you so much to Susan as our host and Vicki as our tech, and Susan overall for your support, your mentorship, your vision for this kind of writing, this kind of space. Thank you to Awakening Spirituality for this opportunity to give space to myself and Lori.
I reiterate all those thank yous. And again, thank you for being here tonight and taking time out of your lives to join us.
And just to say that we're not closing now. You just were very gracious about thank yous, but we'll just stop the recording now, and then we can open up to questions.